let's start this off.
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to work in some of the historical situation comps into these ADPs and these players that we're talking about. So for the first one, I want you to go back in time to the end of the 2012 season. Eli Manning has just beat Tom Brady for the second time. And Antonio Brown, who's 5'10", 185 pounds, ran a 4.48 at his pro day.
Yeah.
Whose best comparable on playerprofiler.com for what it's worth is Stephon Diggs, replaces Mike Wallace, who ran a 4.33 in the 40 as the Pittsburgh Steelers' number one wide receiver. Why do I bring up that situation? Because fast forward literally 10 years, and there's a player whose best comparable on Player Profiler is Stephon Diggs, just like Antonio Brown, who was replacing somebody who just got traded, who ran a 4.32 to Mike Wallace's 4.33. And that's Rashod Bateman. Ran a 4.48 in the combine, which is the same exact 40 time that Antonio Brown ran 10 years earlier at his pro day. And he's replacing somebody who runs a 4.33. And both Antonio Brown and Rashod Bateman's best comparable player on playerprofiler.com is Stephon Diggs. And right now, Rashod Bateman's ADP on fantasyfootballcalculator.com at least, which is pulling data from 679 fantasy football mock drafts between May 16th and May 26th, is 114. And he can be had at pick 6 in the 10th round, which I think is absolutely crazy. And it would be really interesting to see what his ADP is in Underdog, to see if there's much of a discrepancy there. If there is, that would lead me to believe that smarter drafters are drafting on Underdog than Fantasy Football Calculator. But that's something that you can exploit, because we saw Rashod Bateman go late in the mock drafts that we were doing on Sleeper last night. And I'm not saying he's going to be 2013 Antonio Brown. The historical situational comp is there. And theoretically, you can get this player in the 10th round. So what's his ADP on Underdog?
Maybe on Sleeper, yeah, it's definitely higher than that on Underdog. His ADP is 60. So the market, as far as competitive best ball drafts, has certainly corrected to the point where he now has to be drafted by the end of the 5th round if you want to secure him.
So in best balls in Underdog, where the player base is much more locked in,
yep,
his ADP is basically cut in half, because his ADP on Fantasy Football Calculator over the last 10 days aggregated is 114. So you're saying you can get him at basically 60?
Get him at 60. Right at the end of the 5th round, maybe top of the 6th.
That's still... You're still drafting him at the low end.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting a wide receiver 1 in the 6th round. 5th round, but...
Yeah, at the end of the 5th round, you're getting a wide receiver 1. You can still exploit the ADPs on Rashod Bateman right now.
Baltimore's got 259 vacated targets, which feels like a lot just from the departure of Marquise Brown and the likes of, like, say, Devontae Freeman and Latavius Murray. But Baltimore's got significant work available in the passing game. They didn't really do a ton in free agency. They also, Sammy Watkins as well. So there's a good amount of work available. 75% of Baltimore's wide receiver target share from 2021 is available. 75%. That is a significant amount, and is probably right up there around tops in the league. Not the highest. That might more like belong to the Packers and the Chiefs. But Baltimore is comfortably, I would say, in the top 10 of vacated wide receiver targets from 2021 to 2022. There's a ton of work available. There's not a single player in the wide receiver room. I'm not including Mark Andrews here because he's a tight end. There's nobody in the wide receiver room that can match Rashod Bateman from a talent perspective on Baltimore, nor the draft capital. He was a late first-round pick, but a first-round pick is a first-round pick. Baltimore course-corrected last year, a lot out of necessity because they lost their entire backfield before the season could even start.
And had a very depleted defense as well.
But, yeah, and that's still a work in progress. Rookies don't automatically make you better overnight, usually. That being said, Baltimore course-corrected to a point where they were one of the teams throwing the ball on first down more than any other team. I expect that to regress back to the mean a little bit, but they were not afraid to uncork it on first down, and therefore that becomes more of a trend throughout the game overall. Talking about the team that we most associate with a ground and pound rushing attack. This is a very favorable situation for Rashod Bateman. Let me just go in and confirm the type of players that are going around him. Right. So just like going up and down the list briefly and going down the list. Players going about 4 or 5 spots ahead of him. J.K. Dobbins. I think I'd rather take a shot on Bateman. Allen Robinson, Gabe Davis, Juju Smith-Schuster are the 3 receivers being drafted ahead of him. Travis Etienne and Antonio Gibson are also ahead of him. And then right below him are Michael Thomas, who is still rehabbing, Kyler Murray, who we do like as a quarterback, Josh Jacobs, Brandon Cooks, Darnell Mooney. So there are, to be fair, a lot of names in that area that we do like and will vouch for.
He should be going ahead of Gabe Davis. I love Gabe Davis. He should be going ahead of Gabe Davis.
Gabe Davis is at best his team's wide receiver too.
And he should be going ahead of Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah, you can make that argument. I wouldn't say it's definitive, but you can make that argument. Gabe Davis, I agree with, though. As much as we like Gabe, he is his team's wide receiver, too. And I don't think he's ever seen a target share more than, 15%?
Yeah. And he's been a part-time player for his whole career outside of a stretch in last year's playoffs. And people are drafting him like he's set to have last year's playoffs all throughout the course of the 2022 season. His target share through the playoffs should look a whole lot more, or his target share in 2022 should look a whole lot more like it was in the playoffs, but he has been far from a full-time player throughout his career thus far.
Yep. I mean, even Allen Robinson, who I think is has been a wide receiver 1 before last year's disaster, slides into a great situation with the Rams, but will be his team's wide receiver 2. Bateman will be his team's wide receiver 1. And yes, you could argue Mark Andrews is the Ravens' version of Cooper Kupp, but Bateman will be the X receiver and will have an every down role for this team. Can we say the same about will Allen Robinson be on the field every single play for the Rams, especially late in the season if, in fact, they do bring Odell Beckham back? So it's a fair question, I think. And I like Allen Robinson, but I think it's a fair question to bring up.
Absolutely, and I say he should be drafted ahead of Juju because the situation in terms of the number 1 target being a tight end is the same in both places. But the carpet, and I know that Pat Mahomes passes historically more than Lamar Jackson, and most likely will this season. But they've really tried to fill out their wide receiver core as much as possible through the draft and not to a super large extent, but also through free agency. The Ravens have done the exact opposite. So that's why I say, to me, Rashod Bateman slightly ahead, not significantly ahead, but slightly ahead of Juju Smith-Schuster, because we should see a lot of Sky Moore. We should see not a lot, but we should see them try to work in MBS, who they just signed to a large deal.
They gave him some decent money. Yeah, and
I know Mecole Hardman did get injured today. He should still be utilized in that offense a decent amount. So to me, I would still go Rashod Bateman just a hair over Juju Smith-Schuster as well, who is being drafted ahead of him on underdog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fair assessment. Juju could come off the field in maybe run down situations as a slot receiver. Bateman, I don't think, comes off the field as the X. He's going one spot ahead of Michael Thomas, who we have not seen for 2 years. Going a couple spots ahead of Brandon Cooks, who we do like, but let's call a spade a spade. I much prefer Lamar Jackson's wide receiver 1, and again, as much as I like Brandon Cooks, then Davis Mills wide receiver 1. And then Darnell Mooney. Kind of the same argument right now. As much as we want to believe in Justin Fields, we don't have to believe in Lamar Jackson. He's already proven that he can do it at a high level.
Yeah. He has led the league in touchdowns before.
He's been a unanimous MVP.
Come on.
Been a unanimous MVP. So, yeah, give me Rashod Bateman at an ADP of 60, and I won't think twice about it. You're right, Objective. At that point in the draft, a player of his caliber should have been gone, I would say, at least 5 picks later. Maybe even a little bit higher. I'll even go as far as to say guys like Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy are going ahead of him.
We'll get there. They're on my list here to talk about today.
I think he should be in that tier. But that's anyway. I just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah, I think it's a good call out about Bateman and how he's. I think even still at an ADP of 60, could be a little bit undervalued.
And if you can draft on platforms that aren't underdog and take advantage of the fact that he is probably further down the list than most people would think.
Yeah, where's DraftKings have him?
Again, this is ADPs taken from mock drafts done over the past 10 days. He's 114. And it's over the past 10 days, so people are drafting over the last 10 days like like Hollywood Brown is still there. So take advantage of that. In platforms other than underdog. And using nerd, Gabe Davis is going to be a beast this year. I agree, but got to hold that in check a little bit, that excitement in check a little bit. Bateman is just getting an opportunity because Hollywood Brown isn't there, but he didn't have a breakout rookie year better than Gabe Davis's. Gabe Davis got over 600 yards and 7 touchdowns in his rookie year. True, but Gabe Davis also played a full season. Rashod Bateman was working his way back from a groin injury for the first 6 weeks, so you cannot hold that against him.
Right. I think it was like core muscle surgery.
Right. If you extrapolate his totals over the full season based on what he did when he started being involved in the offense and seeing the field, he would have had a better year than Gabe Davis had. Maybe not touchdowns-wise, but definitely usage and yardage-wise.
All right. I don't see FanDuel. FanDuel doesn't appear to have NFL contests up yet. If anybody else sees them, please let me know. But I don't see them. Let me check DraftKings to see if they have contests yet. Man, how long has it been since I signed into these accounts? Anyway, we like
you're
Rashod
all underdog all the time, man.
I am all underdog all the time.
And using nerd, I get your point. That Gabe Davis.
You're talking to a Bills fan. So you don't have to, you don't have to pump Gabe
right
to John.
But just looking realistically, man, Bateman is gonna be heavily utilized this year. They opted to trade away their number 1 wide receiver because they thought the one that they drafted in 2021 was good enough to still run a competent offense around.
Ascend to the X role while still doing what they want to do.
That is a supreme vote of confidence from the team who knows more than anybody here about Rashod Bateman. And
the GM came out after the draft, after that move was made, and I'm paraphrasing what he said here, but he said as much. He was like, we believe in Rashod Bateman and his talent and why we made him a first-round pick. I'm paraphrasing what specifically said, but he did say that.
The last time we saw really a move like this, again, Antonio Brown, Mike Wallace, and you said it even before then with Santonio Holmes and Mike Wallace.
Yeah,
Was
did
it
go
was it
Holmes
Mike Wallace?
to Wallace
Was it
to AB, something like that?
Yeah, and
Can't
if
keep
you look at
track.
organizationally, yeah, the Steelers have always found good wide receivers, but organizationally, from a GM standpoint, if you were to say one team is comparable to what the Steelers have done in terms of consistency, really,
Ravens are right there.
is the Ravens. Yeah, they might not have specifically the wide receiver drafts that the Steelers have, but from a just overall personnel standpoint, they have almost, if not better, or if not straight up on par with the Steelers, just as good of a player evaluation.
I think top to
track
bottom
record.
at this, I think they've surpassed them.
There you go.
I do. I think there's.
So
I
if you
give
got-
them all the. I give them all the credit in the world. I don't know if there's a front office year in and year out I respect more than theirs.
If you got the Ravens saying we can let go of our number one wide receiver because the guy that we already have in the room is that much better,
Yeah.
then you gotta take that
Tip my
seriously.
cap to them. Yeah, I do.
So that's the first guy.
There's number
ADPs
one.
based off and his historical comps wise. Did you bring up DraftKings?
I don't see. Oh, sorry, DraftKings. I was sorry. I was looking at FanDuel. Let me pull this up right now. What's my location? You don't need to worry about my location. All right, it's checking it. If you want to move on, I'll see if they have any type of ADP data here. But FanDuel
And
doesn't have any NFL contests up
The
yet.
last
You
thing
guys-
I'll say is, Gabe Davis is undervalued right now too. So within that conversation, in terms of ADPs, Gabe Davis has a depressed ADP as well, based off of what we're projecting for him. But he is in the next tier for me of wide receivers, just inside that next tier, as really what are projected to be really good wide receiver twos for their team, but not quite wide receiver ones for their team, because Rashod Bateman is a wide receiver one for his team, and there's literally nobody else there in the wide receiver room, like Nick alluded to. That's why he is in a tier above for me. But Gabe Davis also has some ADP correction and some ADP value to be had there.
Bateman's ADP on DraftKings is 67, so
Okay.
a little lower. They have a couple other guys. They've got some. They have their own rankings. They have Amon-Ra ahead of him.
That's wild. Okay.
It's not so drastically different, but obviously he's 7 spots farther down, so little different. It looks like they've got a few more quarterbacks ahead of him. So that's just their ADPs.
That happens.
Yeah. So he's slightly more. He's about. I would say he's a half a round cheaper, probably on average on DraftKings versus Underdog.
And before we